I do have to say this is one of the emptiest park entrances I have ever seen. It's already long past opening time and it's still this quiet, which I guess is pretty good. So this video is about one of my last days living in Japan and realizing that there were two roller coasters high on my bucket list that I didn't get to ride yet. Kawasemi at Tobu Zoo and Bandit at Yomiuriland. So I figured I would visit both of these parks in one day and be back in time to get a haircut and have dinner in the evening, which made for a pretty tight schedule. I'll explain more along the way, but for now, let's get back to Tobu Zoo for a second. So this is definitely the emptiest park that I've ever been, ever. It feels like I'm one of the only guests in the park at all. I could see a few other people here and there, but other than that, it's completely empty, which is kind of strange considering it's a Saturday and the weather isn't even all that bad. But the views are pretty fantastic already. Got a really cool view of Regina, the Woody over there. And I think one of the first things that I just want to do is head over to Kawasemi and see how that one is. Really looking forward to that. That's one of the roller coasters that I've been looking forward to riding most in Japan, and it's a wonder that it's been taking me half a year to finally get here. So yeah, let's go. Kawasemi is generally known as one of the best, smallest roller coasters in the world. It's the first coaster of the Intamin Mega-Lite model, which gives you pretty much the experience of a mega or hyper coaster like Goliath or Millennium Force on a tiny 31 meter tall layout. And god, this thing actually lives up to the hype. Despite how small this ride is, it is absolutely an airtime machine. The first drop is pretty good for how low it really is. There's a curve at the bottom of it where you get some nice forces, and then you go into this twisted airtime hill underneath the lift hill, which is all pretty nice. Then you get into the biggest airtime hill of the ride, which is already a lot more violent than anything so far in the ride. And then you go into these twisted airtime hills, which is personally my favorite part because these really throw you out of your seat pretty violently. And the ride ends with a bunch of small bunny hops, with again some pretty good airtime before you go back into the station. So all in all, this layout might just be the most perfect layout for its size. I honestly cannot imagine making a better layout for how small this ride is. You get a really wide range of airtime, some nice pacing, and super smooth curves. All I can say is that there should definitely be more of these Intamin Mega-Lites in the world. So Tobu Zoo isn't only about Kawasemi. There's also Regina, which is by far the second best ride in the park, I would say, and arguably the best wooden roller coaster in Japan. Considering how few there are in Japan, it's not that much of an achievement, but if you're a fan of classic woodies, then this is probably the best thing you'll get. It's also a rare coaster with a distinctly female name and logo and everything. Even the advertisement for it back in the day managed to sexually objectify a roller coaster of all things, but I guess we can chalk that up to Japan being Japan. Anyway, it's a fun ride, and it's a really nice bonus when you go there to ride Kawasemi. I wouldn't say that it's something to travel to the park for and go out of your way to ride, but it's just a really classic out and back layout with some drops and mostly unbanked turns. There's not a lot of airtime on it, and it's pretty shaky, but it's not shaky to the point where it's uncomfortable. I think it just contributes to the out of control wooden coaster feel that you get on the ride. So overall, great wooden coaster, probably the best in Japan, and definitely pick it up if you're at the park anyway. Now this is probably no surprise to you, but Tobu Zoo also has a zoo section, so I decided to check that out for a bit. And it's pretty disappointing, to be honest. Granted, there was some snow, which is really rare for Tokyo, and it doesn't really help with all the palm trees and the subtropical foliage and all of that. So the zoo didn't really look very good. But aside from that, I think the animal enclosures are just really small and poorly themed, so the whole place just looks a little bit sad. The monkeys had a pretty nice onsen though. I also went to the penguins because Tobu Zoo is, or was, the home of Grape-kun, which is a famous penguin who fell in love with an anime girl cutouts in his enclosure. Unfortunately though, Grape-kun died a while ago, and all the anime girls are gone, so it's not much to visit the zoo section for anymore. So I decided to head back to the theme park section to ride Kawasemi a few times again, and then it was time to travel across Tokyo and go to Yomiuriland. Yomiuriland is located on a hill in the east of Tokyo, and because of that it has some awesome views over the city. You can even see the skyline of Shinjuku from there. I didn't go for that specifically though, I just wanted to ride this particular coaster, Bandit. When this thing opened in 1988, it was the fastest coaster in the world, and though it's technically not the first hypercoaster because it mostly conforms to the terrain, the height difference within the ride is 78 meters, so that is pretty intense actually for how old this thing is. And this might just be the best Togo coaster in the world. It's pretty smooth, all things considered. It has some nice airtime moments, a really forceful helix, and just great views over the skyline of Tokyo. Also, I was allowed to wear my glasses and take my backpack on the ride, which, considering how huge the drops on this thing are and the fact that it's Japan and they usually care a lot about safety, that was a really nice surprise. Now, another surprisingly good Togo coaster in this park is the really strangely named Momonga Standing Loop coaster. Before I went on it, I thought it would hurt intensely considering that it's the first stand-up coaster ever built, and it's also built by Togo, which has pretty horrible reputation to begin with, but this ride was actually really enjoyable as well. It's pretty smooth, it has a really forceful and almost circular loop, and the trains are pretty comfortable for a stand-up coaster. So yeah, somehow this park managed to get a bunch of actually good Togo coasters. But even though it has some good rides, I think Yomiuriland is mostly known for the winter illuminations, which you can see all over the park, and they definitely look great at night. But before it got dark, I wanted to ride Spin Runway, a ride which I didn't even know existed before I looked at Yomiuriland's website. But it's a really fun indoor spinning coaster with a really creative runway theme. It's a great replacement for Twist Coaster Robin, which operated on the same place for only a few hours before it crashed and shut down forever. Anyway, after that I ended the night by checking out the illuminations across the park, and I highly recommend you do the same if you visit this place in winter. Because the park is built on a hill, you have a really great view of the lights from the highest places in the park, and even the track and trains of Bandit have these light strips on them that make for an amazing looking coaster to look at night. So yeah, that's it for Tobu Zoo and Yomiuriland. All in all, for both of these parks, 7 out of 10, would recommend. At least if you're in the Tokyo area and you're into theme parks. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all next time.